All right, good evening, everybody. It is officially 8:30, and I am just verifying my audio as usual. Looks like we are good to go. So I want to welcome everybody to this week's edition of Wisdom Wednesday. Coach Smith coming to you from my humble abode. And had 1 week off last week, had a lot going on, but felt it was really important to get us right back in here, learning a little bit together and talking about some educational material. And I came up with basically tonight's segment based on a lot of questions I get from customers and just in general across the board in daily interactions with individuals. And I thought a real good one of it was to essentially talk a little bit about preparations for nationals and junior gold. A lot of it is a lot of crossover between the two. So I'm going to spend quite a bit of time, talking a little bit of my own insight of what I think is the feedback that I give to my customers, students, parents, anything along those lines. But I will give it a couple minutes here. I see everybody is popping in, so just drop those hellos on there. Good evening, Richie, Lorenzo. Glad to have you on. Jacob, I think we might be bowling two different regionals this weekend. I think I saw you might be going down to the Carolinas. I'm headed up to Ohio, so not sure if I'll see you or not. But if you are just stopping in, please drop a hello so I kind of get an idea of who we have in attendance here. I am really hoping that we get quite a bit of youth bowlers on tonight. Would love to see some adults on as well, specifically parents, because I think there's a lot of information that I can share on here that I think is really, really important, especially for the junior gold crowd. So a lot of people popping in here. Drop your hellos here. Let me know who's on the feed. And after that, I will kind of get started. Kevin Ripley, good evening. Hope you and Megan are doing well. I'm double tasking here. I actually have the PBA 50 up on the screen in the background here. So if you see my eyes float up, I'm just looking at the score. Love bowling. Good evening, Ryan. Glad to hear you're excited for junior gold, Richie. Sounds like you must have qualified to go down to Indianapolis. I would love to be going down there this year, but I don't think it's going to be in the cards. They got a lot of regionals on the schedule, and they conflict pretty much before and after. So I was hoping to at least get down to some of the DV8 shootouts, but I don't think it's going to happen. But good evening, Chapels. Glad everybody is online there. So, all right, I'll tell you what, people are continuing to come in, but I want to make sure that I get into the topics at hand. And the reason I kind of chose to do kind of a combined one for nationals and junior gold is there's a lot of commonalities that the two tournaments have. Okay, obviously one is junior specific. The other one is an adult function. And juniors cannot participate because they can't do team bowling. They can only do individual with a waiver. But one thing that they do share in common, or a couple things they share in common, is that in both instances, you don't know the pattern you're actually going to bowl on. Okay, so for USBC Nationals, they will not release the actual pattern until after the entire tournament is over. And it's very similar to what we run into when we're talking about junior gold, where the kids are going to generally run into a short, a medium, and a long pattern, but they don't know the actual pattern itself. So it brings a ton of questions and a ton of angst sometimes when individuals are trying to basically prepare for these tournaments, and they're a little confused as to, okay, what needs to be in my bag. Not only that, but especially for the kids, they are, when they go to junior gold, they are only allowed so many bowling balls that they can check in for use. It's similar to like a U.S. Open, if you will. But you kind of run into that a lot when you're doing the USBC Nationals as well, because a lot of it is we're flying on an airplane. And unless you are ready to spend just an exuberant amount of dollars to get extra equipment out there, it's very expensive to get out to the destinations with more than 6 balls in tow. If you're driving, you can get away with it. But essentially, most players are going out there with 6 balls. Some will take 9. You can be glad at USBC Nationals now that you can actually use roller bags, because I will tell you, when I first started attending, honestly, you were only able to take out in the lanes what you could physically carry. So even if you had triple ball bags, or heck, one of those big 6-ball stack things, you had to pick it up. I mean, you weren't allowed to pull it out. So it always has a question that I get asked on, or I give my opinion on. And I'm going to start with the most important ball when you're building an arsenal for those 2 tournaments. Okay. So we have to quickly get on one side of the fence or the other. And I'm not going to tell you there's a right or a wrong on this, but I'm going to give you my opinion. Okay. A lot of individuals, especially when you're going to junior gold, for instance, I will see kids state, I can only have 6 balls. Is it 5 balls max for junior gold? I was thinking it's 6. If it's 5, it may be. But okay, even if that's the case, the very first thing I hear from a lot of the youth players is, well, I'm just going to take a urethane bowling ball to shoot my spares with, because it'll double and I'll be able to use that on the short pattern. Okay, here's where the problem with that lies, okay? And it's no different for an adult thinking about doing the same thing. Now, if you're a typical player, okay, and you're going to go to junior gold, or you're going to go to USBC Nationals, and you shoot spares back here at home at your local league or your tournaments or anything you're doing, and you use a plastic bowling ball at those spares, there should be zero thoughts in your head, even though you're on a ball restriction, to think about going out to any one of those tournaments and then just saying, I'm going to use a urethane bowling ball to shoot my spares. Okay. It is not a good idea. And the problem is, and the urethane thing really doesn't make sense to me shooting spares. Okay. Urethane bowling balls, they're very porous. They tear up the front part of the lane, and they read early. So when you're shooting on a variety of patterns and trying to use a urethane-based bowling ball, and let's say you turn your spare release a little bit, you're going to have a really hard time going and transitioning from a plastic or polyester ball into a urethane ball to shoot your spares. Now, if you're a player back home that uses a regular ball, or uses a urethane ball while you're at home, by all means, you're very well prepared, that what that ball is going to do from pattern to pattern to pattern. Okay, so you could have a little more, a better feel going out there, knowing that it's not really going to change the way that you do things out there. But you have to also understand, whether you're bowling junior gold, where you're going to be on multiple patterns against the best junior players that are out there, or you're going to go to nationals and wanting to have a good showing, you can't have the most important ball in your bag be something that's not of the norm. All right. When you bowl these tournaments, and whether you're bowling for brackets, you're trying to make a run at Team USA and doing things like that, your spare ball, whatever you're using, has to be the first ball that goes into your bag. When you're packing, it has to be the first ball. And it has to be the one that you rely on, because that is the one that is going to make you make cuts, and the one that is going to separate individuals that make a run to maybe win it, or make a deep run and maybe get picked up. Because spare shooting 101 is going to tell you that the spare shooters and the individuals who close the boxes at either one of those tournaments are going to yield the highest scores, the deepest runs, and the most successful teams. Okay. It's huge. All right. So look at your bag. Think about that realistically. If that is something, especially for the kids, if you're not used to doing it, if that's not something you practice, you have some choices to do pretty quickly. You better start practicing the next few weeks, only utilizing that spare ball when you, or urethane ball, if that's what you choose to use, when you're shooting spares. All right. Now, the next thing that I really want individuals to understand where it gets it is, and you're talking about bowling balls and things like that, let's talk about that spare ball. This is where I see people get in the most amount of trouble. So for individuals that maybe are not used to bowling on those types of patterns, or you get into bowling on patterns that are lower ratios and they're harder, the biggest pitfall that I see players run into is when they're back home and they have free hook to their right or left, depending on which hand you throw with. We always see individuals hooking the entire lane with a standard ball to make, let's say, a 4-pin or a 7-pin or a 2-pin. Okay. That stuff does not work when you bowl at USBC Nationals or you bowl on patterns. All right. Every single player that is on this feed that bowls league back home is guilty of it, me included, to hook a ball at a spare across lane because I know it's going to come back. If that is the way you currently shoot spares, you are going to be in for a rude awakening when you go to venues like this. That spare ball or release or what you're using, you need to be going at those spares, single pins mainly, throwing right at them, not using the lane to try to aid into hitting that pin. All right. That's critical because what happens is you get so used to doing that. And then I see individuals go out to nationals and things like that, and they try to rely on the lane to take the bowling ball and take it over to the 4-pin or the 7-pin, and they leave open after open after open. That's why you see guys, and gals or, that go out and they're a little harder at nationals. And some years are really, really hard. These guys average 230, 240 back home, and they can't bowl 500 when they get to nationals because they have no idea how to shoot a spare. Okay. These are things and preparations you got to really think about when you're going to do this. So for the youth out there, if you currently are one of those individuals that's not utilizing the polyester and the things in that way and shooting spares going at it and having a regiment of how to make spares in that manner, again, that's where you're going to struggle the most when you try to make a run at something like junior gold. Okay. The kids that are winning junior gold in any one of the divisions are keeping the pocket in play. They are being good spare shooters because I promise you, it's not because they strike the most that everybody there. Sure, they help. Okay. But it takes a lot of 5-baggers and 6-baggers to make up for an open. Every time we go 9 miss, it costs us a minimum. It costs us 11 pins. And if your count's lower, it's even higher. I don't know about you, but that's the single easiest thing anybody can do to approach how to excel at either one of these tournaments. Okay. So got the spare stuff out of the way, right? A big thing that, we talk about is, okay, well, coach, or, I'm going to here. And I think another pitfall I see, especially I'll pick on some of the adults a little bit, is they're going to nationals and they know that at nationals, they don't have free hook to the right. So they're all migrating and they're coming in and they want the biggest, baddest bowling ball available in the market. Okay. That doesn't mean it's going to allow you to play the part of the lane that's not in play. Okay. And don't take this the wrong way, but there's only so much I can do as a coach, as a player, as a ball driller to make a bowling ball work for a particular pattern, especially when we're drilling a bowling ball for a pattern that is invisible to us because we don't know exactly what's out there. We can take an educated guess at the pattern lengths. But again, this is where if you've watched some previous segments, it is so critical to understand how important the surface preparations are of your bowling ball, because you're going to pick bowling balls for either event that you need to have some confidence with. And you definitely need a benchmark bowling ball in there that helps you read the lane so you understand what the lane is doing from the front to the back. Okay. Not necessarily always left to right, front to back movements, because you can make adjustments to the surface of the ball. Now, depending on the tournament, that gets rough because, they don't allow you to make a surface prep unless you're doing it in the back room or before the squad. It really depends what you're on. But you have to understand that there's not a perfect ball that you're going to physically drill before you go there. And the answer is not to drill the most aggressive bowling ball on the market, to go out there and then try to just throw it where you're used to throwing it in league. It just doesn't work that way. All right. When you get out of onto the patterns with the flatter ratios, there is a much bigger premium on making balanced shots and keeping your angles more in front of you most times until the lane allows it to open up. Okay, it's very hard to overpower some of those patterns. So, I'm not going to tell, there's not a secret Bible or a book that is going to say it's these 5 balls that need to go out there. But if you're traveling with 5 or 6 bowling balls, what you do have to do is make sure that you have enough variety in the types of bowling balls that are in those bags. Okay, especially for junior gold, where you're going to hit a multitude of different length patterns. So you're definitely going to have, a bowling ball for a short pattern. You got to have something in there that's going to be able to read the lane early and be rolling forward at the end. So we need a shape that's early. When you get into the medium pattern, or even some as the short goes on, you're going to need some slightly cleaner covers at some point, but you're also going to need a benchmark, so maybe a symmetric for most people with kind of middle of the range. And you're going to want to make sure that you have something with a bigger motor in it. So, whether that is a hybrid asymmetric and then maybe a solid asymmetric in the bag, you've got to have enough distinction. Okay, so when you're building the bag, because it's so different for every person based on how you throw it, okay, here's what I want you to do. When you're thinking about going to any one of these events, okay, I want you to take the bowling balls you're thinking of taking there, all right? And here's what you're going to do. You're going to take that, and the numbers mean quite a bit on the bowling balls, but the surface prep means the most. I want you to take all of those balls minus the spare ball and pick a grit Abralon, okay? So let's say we'll use 1,000 Abralon, okay? We're going to hit each one of those bowling balls with 1,000 Abralon that you think are distinctly different from each other to start, all right? Then when you hit them all with 1,000 for that surface prep, I want you to understand and notate, are they enough different from each other with those surfaces being close, because that is where you want to be. Okay, so if I put that surface on all 4 or 5 of those bowling balls at 1,000, and I throw them down the lanes, and I'm looking front to back and watching, one goes longer at that surface, next one is a little shorter, the next one is a little shorter, the next one is a little shorter. Now we're on to something. Okay, now we know we're selecting bowling balls that are distinctly different from each other, even at the same surface. All right. Then when you're there and the lane is telling you what it wants, you will know what surface then to be able to put on the bowling ball to get it to do exactly what you want it to do. Now you have disparity there. You have a difference between those. It's huge. Okay. So the reason I say I'm not going to give you exact bowling balls or exact, you need this, 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 and this. Okay. If I was working with just you, okay, you as a person, and maybe you're on a one-on-one segment with me, absolutely, I can help you with what I think is correct. But because we all throw it so differently, rev rates, tilts, axis rotation, anything in general, our benchmark balls are not the same. Okay. My benchmark ball is not the same as another person's benchmark ball. It is all based on who you are as the player. But if you take what I just explained to you with trying to figure out what's in the bag and doing it with the surface preps that way, you will go a lot further. So I just had a comment come in. Mike Martins is actually out at Nationals. Team Shot is playing tight this year. Mike, I'm going to give some feedback right off the back. Okay. So I've seen at least 5 or 6 different posts. And I will tell you right now, you are the first person I think I saw that it says the Team Shot is tight. Okay. I've actually seen from multiple people that even the team patterns hooking more, and the singles and doubles events, there is a lot of hook out there. I've even had people saying that urethane looks good. So again, what I'm getting at with that is, Mike, it might have been tight when you're there. Okay. Even though it's the same pattern, it's a different group of people that are there. What time of the day you bowled? What is the ambient temp in the building? There's so many anomalies that go to it. So if you think you're going out there with the perfect lineup, okay, based on what other people are saying, okay, you got to use it for a grain of salt. All right. Because what you run into and what the lane is telling you is ultimately going to dictate how you bowl. But the things you can control is the things we started with, right? You can control how good you shoot your spares. You can control having the proper spare ball for yourself, what you are the most accustomed to using, and making spares with on a common basis. Okay. That is huge. All right. I hope that stuff makes sense, because that's not where I'm ending this, because there is, I'm going to do a little bit of a storytelling here. And, you know, I'm going to get into that. A lot of it with Junior Gold. I think I'm going to go over a lot of things for the bowlers, hopefully, that are on, and also the parents, because I think this stuff is super important. And from the national side, to kind of wrap that part of it up for now, Mike is saying 1 team per pair. Okay, spares are key. The lanes are not going to break down as fast. So depending on how your team attacked that pattern, Mike, might have made them feel tighter than what they are. Okay, so when you go to nationals and you're bowling in a team environment, it is a different animal. You're not bowling for yourself, right? Essentially, you want to make sure you're bowling with individuals who you have confidence in, that either throw it similar to what you do, are able to play zones on the lane similar. Because what you really have to do, and the teams that win Eagles and they get deep runs and they're consistently up there each year, those teams work together and break the lanes down in a proper manner. Okay, so if they see where they feel, or they want to create a bounce spot, teams will work together to actually utilize a bowling ball that maybe is not going to be used for score, and they will use surface preps, and they will probably purposely play a little further right than where they plan to play once they bowl for score, because they are essentially trying to break the lane down a little bit to give them some miss room. Okay. And we will generally do that with a little more surface. We'll generally do it to the right. That way, once we bowl for scoring, we take a little move in, and it makes you feel like you got a little more room. Because let's be realistic, folks, your arm swing is a lot looser when you have area. Okay. It doesn't matter how good you are, right? You get a little bit of area and you get a little bit of cushion out there and a little bit of miss room, you're definitely going to make much cleaner shots. You are actually going to score better, because you are going to be loose and you're not so tense, and you're not going to be pinching one off and grabby and stuff like that. When in a team environment, that's where you got to work together, right? So when you go out to nationals and you're going out for the prep, it's important for you guys and gals and whatever team environment you're going to go to is to openly communicate before and during the competition. And if you want to see great examples of this, watch collegiate bowling. Okay, collegiate bowling is a true form of team, where they are living every shot together as individuals. They're working together. They're generally, if you watch, they're playing the same parts of the lanes. They're making a lot of ball changes together, even though their styles may be a little different. But depending on the tournament they're going to, that roster is going to be more compromised to people that do things more the same. So kind of similar ball motions, playing the lanes the same, because they essentially will play the same part of the zone, and it makes it a lot easier. So you're not going to put a polar opposite. Like, if I'm breaking a lane down, it's going to be hard for me to bowl on a team with Carrie, who's very straight through the fronts and doesn't have a ton of hand. And I have a higher, rev rate and like to play him in a little bit. You got to be smart about what your team composition is. And it's no different in the collegiate level. And I'm not picking on left-handers, but you'll see sometimes there's not a lot of lefties in the lineup, because unless the left is really good that week, there's just not enough of them to break the lane down, so they don't get to play as much. Okay. It's just part of it. That's a team environment that you're going for. All right. So big one on nationals. Minor events, a little different, a little quicker pace. Scores going out there, just know they're giving up some scores in singles and doubles. So I think they're playing reasonably soft. You can tell because the pace of play is pretty quick, with a lot less people that are actually in the building. All right. Hopefully that stuff makes sense, because again, there's a lot of things that cross over between the two. And by all means, as I'm talking here, which we all know I'm very good at doing for long periods of time, when you have questions or comments or something that you want to throw in there, by all means, put them up there. I will try and get to every single one of them I read. But I'm going to transition over to Junior Gold. And I'm going to start with talking to the kids here a little bit. But don't worry, parents, I'm going to talk to you too, because it's important. All right. So first and foremost, Junior Gold is just an absolutely amazing, just crazy program that's just blown up. This tournament was, just grows and grows and grows and grows. And I think they're trying to refine and make it better each and every year. And yeah, it's hard to organize, and maybe there's too many kids there at this point, but it is, for the competitors as young, bowlers, you have an amazing opportunity to go out and essentially not only compete at a high level and see the best talent that's across the entire United States that are coming together to compete in a location, but you're going to have an experience not just on the bowling side, but with the people that you meet, and kids that you get to maybe put a face to the name, and forming bonds and everything together out there, are things that you're going to cherish for the rest of your life. Me being 42 years old, there was nothing like Junior Gold when I was young, so didn't have that opportunity. But there's some things, again, that I think is really important for the youth to really embrace and understand. First and foremost, if you are going to Junior Gold, it means that you have qualified somewhere along the lines to have the ability to go. Okay. Now, the one thing that the youth that you need to understand is that every one of us comes from a different background. Okay. And I think first and foremost, when you look at your parents or relatives or anybody or whoever supports your bowling journey, one thing that you need to understand as a kid, okay, is that there was likely a lot of sacrifices that were put in from your parents or relatives or whoever is overseeing your life, to afford you the opportunity to go down there. It is not a cheap trip. Is it expensive? It probably was expensive leading up to it because you probably traveled to multiple locations and bowled in tournaments, and maybe they didn't get enough kids to have multiple divisions, and it took a while to qualify. All that takes time and money and backing and dedication from the parents. Okay, when you're looking at your parents, you really want to respect the fact of what they do to allow you to even have the opportunity to go and participate in something like this for a week, right? You know, parents can drive you nuts, right? We've all been there, okay? But it's a two-way street. But you have to embrace it. You have to be thankful for everything that they do. Bowling equipment is not cheap. Practicing to get at the level where you need to be it comes at an incredible cost to your parents, right? Or going to the local tournaments and around here, things like the the PJBTs and the JBTs and the things that have been around in whatever your area you're from. These are all things you're working towards scholarships and things along those lines. But take a minute to essentially make sure you thank your parents, okay, for what they're doing. They're also all, to take you down there. They're going to be taking their vacation time to support you. They're going to be, off of work. Maybe they get a week or 2 weeks vacation. So this might be their vacation for the year too. Right. So again, make sure you're thankful for what you have in front of you. Now, the other thing for the kids, the things that you guys have to understand and the things that you have to do, you got to remember too that, yeah, you're there. You want to have the best performance that you can possibly have, but you also have to remember that this is an experience and it's supposed to be fun as well. Okay. If you get too wrapped up or too overly just involved in just feeling like you have to compete, you have to win, you have to be perfect. This is the pinnacle. It all happens here. This is life or death. This is what I got to do. It's not the case, gang, right? You're again, this is a bigger stage, a bigger tournament, but you also got to remember why you love the game. Okay. Why you work so hard to get to go down there to that tournament, right? We all know there is, depending on the age group you're in, and there's plenty of collegiate coaches that are down there and they use it as a a venue where they can go in and they can look at, up and coming talent and things like that. But I'm going to tell you a little tidbit here, and this is where I'll transition into the parents as well. Is that, yeah, they're looking for talent. Okay, they're looking for talented individuals, right? But it's not only about how you throw it. Okay, there's a lot of really good physical players when it comes to bowling at the youth level, adult, across the board. Okay, but what separates good players and great players is how is their mental aptitude? How do they handle themselves? At a young age, are they coachable? Are they presentable? How do they react to when they have a shortcoming? These are all part of the equations that coaches look for, right? Because if you come off like an uncoachable child, you're going to have a really hard time being in a team environment and actually excelling, right? You're going to struggle in that type of environment. So, I mean, they're generally looking for people they know would mesh well with others as well. And when I say this, it's a two-way street because I've said quite a bit about be thankful for what your parents sacrificed and things like that for you, but for the parents, okay, and this one hits near and dear to me, and I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story here during this, but um, the one thing you have to remember, and it's not specific to bowling either, is yes, you as the parent, you've sacrificed to make sure your kid was afforded this opportunity, and you know when the kids are there, maybe they're not performing their best. Okay, we need to remember one thing. I guarantee you, your child that's in that competition wants to do their very best. Okay. Um, sure, as kids, we've gone through spells where we kind of give up or we're indifferent and things like that. But we also need to understand that the children that we're here and we're giving this opportunity for are kids at the end of the day. Okay. And they're not fully, matured to the point where they're going to handle every situation perfectly. But the worst thing that any parent can do is to come off overly hard on your children. Okay. Look, we see it in every sports. We see it in baseball. We see it. There's the parent that's just over the top and they're very hard on their kids. Okay. It is one thing to push a child to be a good version of themselves. Okay. To be a good player. But what doesn't work is an overbearing parent that is really hard on their child 24/7, and they're critiquing every single shot that they throw. Okay. And the reason I said that there's a story is, and I'm just going to put it out there. I'm not saying names or anything else, but I helped at a youth event this past weekend. And I love watching youth bowling. I love the kids that are coming up. Just seeing how they, interact on harder shots and things along those lines. And I was standing in the back, and it was probably about 10 or 20 feet away. And there was a parent who was just absolutely grilling their young daughter. And every single shot had the kid in tears and bawling and wanting her to go home and calling her a failure. I mean, it was ugly. And it took everything in my power to not step in and say something to that parent and pull them aside. And the only reason that I didn't is it wasn't my place to. Okay. But I can say it in an open forum here that when I hear those things, I think back to my childhood. Okay. My parents, they separated when I was young. Okay. But they were very supportive of my love of the game. And, my dad had more of the bowling background, and my mom was, I would say, took so many sacrifices to allow me to even participate in tournaments. But when I looked at my dad, my dad was, he was tough when it was practice time and getting to work and doing those things. But neither one of my parents would ever go to that extent where they were just, belittling me to the point where I just didn't want to do it. I mean, there's a difference between pushing and just trying to live vicariously through your kid. Okay. At the end of the day, you have got to remember too that your kids are trying the best. Okay. And they're not every one of them is going to have the ability built in to win this tournament or others or whatever they're doing. But what you can do as a parent is to encourage and to understand and to have an ear and understand that when the kids are upset, sometimes they cannot articulate into words the best way, but getting into an argument with them out in the open and getting into a yelling match is not going to impress anybody. And why am I saying this to the parents? Let me tell you something. Whether it's bowling, it's baseball, hockey, if you're in a venue where you have collegiate coaches that are present, Team USA, anything along those lines, I will tell you right off the bat that if we see individuals who have parents that are looking like they're going to be difficult parents, that is a real turnoff for a kid getting into a program. Okay. And I'm not a collegiate coach. Okay. But I know that what I'm saying is true. If you are a parent that is acting in that manner, that is a red flag to a lot of these places that are going to be worried that their kid is not ready to be in a team atmosphere and working with others. And they may not be very receptive to different types of coaching, or they may be fearful that the parent is going to try and overstep their bounds when it comes to the team. All right. Look, go in there, parents, and support your kids. You made those sacrifices, work with them, love what they're doing, enjoy getting to watch them because, man, they grow so quick, right? Every one of the parents that are in here can pretty much justify that. Well, where did the time go? Okay. Eric is in here, and I'm sure Mama Herb, if she was in here, she'd say, well, Eric was just bowling high school a couple weeks ago, and now he's out of college, he's a cop, like it goes by so quickly. So remember why you're there. You're giving your child an opportunity to have this life experience at this huge level and open up chances and thinking about what it could do to the doors in the future. But at the same time, don't go over the top and be so hard at them that they forget why they love the game. All right. That's not good for anybody. That's not conducive to making a child love the game. All right. So you have a stake in it too. They owe you respect and you owe them respect back. Okay. The respect from the children and the competitors is that what it took to get them there. So financial obligations, the coaching they may have gotten from the family and friends, or maybe they went out and worked with some of the best coaches. There's a lot of things that gave them the opportunity. Of course, you don't want a child to act out and do things incorrectly when they're there, but have a supportive conversation. And if things don't go well while they're there, that's okay. All right. Believe me, it's okay. If they don't bowl well, it's just going to be okay. But what you can do is you can try and lend, an ear, lend a hand, afterwards kind of help talk through the process of what went right, what went wrong, and then just focus in on what maybe we can do a little bit different. Right. But every time they throw the ball down the lane, telling them that they didn't do this or they didn't do that, that stuff doesn't work. Okay. And parents, you can take it for what it's at. This is my program, so I'm going to say it, right? Sometimes parents, your ability to coach isn't correct. The game has evolved so much into things that the modern game isn't what it was years ago. Okay, so there's a lot of rights and a lot of wrongs, and trust that we hear a lot of bad advice that can be working against what we're trying to do. So just make sure you stay up on the modern game and the things you can do. But by all means, just be supportive instead, right? Enjoy it with them. Have fun with the other parents that are there. It's everybody's little mini vacation that they're on as well. So, treat it as the experience that it is, and just be there as the ear and the lending hand for when they need you. Okay. God knows they're going to have plenty of fun when they're doing it. Maybe they get frustrated when they're bowling, but you know what? They're going to be around friends, new acquaintances, things that they're going to, get to encounter while they're there is something that they're not going to forget. And the more that you get to focus in on enjoying that with them instead of doing some of the things we just talked about in the wrong manner, the more it's going to be that you all talk about it together and can't wait to do something like it again in the future. Okay. It's huge. All right. That was a lot of long-winded talking for me. Okay. But it's something that I thought was critical. And I really hope, it looks like a couple of people dropped off here, but I really hope that people go back and the parents take that to heart. The kids take it to heart, from the things that are saying there, and really understand the first part of the segment, which was really, laser focused in on, the spare game, the mental game, the things we're talking about there, and whether it's for junior gold or it's for nationals, the things that are going to yield the biggest X, Y, and Z impact if you go out there and you want to have the best possible chance of making a run. So, how about any questions that are out there? We're at about the 41 or 42 minute mark. Anything that you wish I would have covered and that maybe I didn't get to, or any additional explanations of something you have, or just you got me on the feed right now. Just any general coaching questions in general, I'll be happy to answer a few of them tonight, and we'll go from there. Looks like Jonathan Hendershot. Would you say that the mental game is the most important thing to have at Junior Gold? Honestly, the mental game is the most important thing to have in any venue. How you react to when you're bowling great versus when you don't have it that day is always a learning opportunity. Okay, so when you fail, the biggest thing that you need to understand is why you failed. All right, so you need to turn the negatives that you've done in anything in your life and focus in on, okay, this happened. I can't change the fact that it happened, but what can I do to try and avoid it from happening again? So if you go way back and you're talking from old segments when I talked about quicksand, you definitely want to make sure that you're focusing yourself and not allowing yourself to go deeper, deeper, and deeper into trouble because you are not letting go of something that happened in the past. Okay. So when you cover the mental aspect of bowling in general, it's pretty simple. Okay. You want to try to avoid as many distractions as possible because you need to be laser focused in on what you're doing. Okay. So depending on what the environment is, like, I see a lot of times people will go into a tournament, whether it be a local tournament or all the way up, and the whole time, I look back and they're over here on their phone between frames, right? And they're twiddling their thumbs and they're texting back and forth with people. So, my first thought about that is that, how focused are you really? Now, some people could say, I use that as a way to kind of block everything else out around me. It keeps me loose. Okay. I could take that for a path forward and how you may do things. But for most of us, it's more of a distraction than it is anything. I really try to, keep the phone in the bag and, try to embrace the moment that you're in. And when you get the mental aptitude of it, is to not allow the shortcomings and the small things to really upset you. You just got to let them go. Look, if you split, get the count. If you're ringing tens and your ball motion isn't great, figure out what the motion is so you can start correcting it. If you go up and you miss one of those, it stinks. It costs you the count, but you got to be able to separate yourself and let it go. Because if you compound it and you continue to do the same things over and over and over again, it's just going to get worse. And that's mental. That's not, when the physical stuff starts going away, and the mental aptitude is what needs to get you to work through it to fix it, that's where we get in trouble, because if your mental game isn't strong, you're not going to change the physical things that are going wrong as well. Hopefully that answered you a little bit there, Jonathan. But if not, I do encourage you, go onto the YouTube channel. The YouTube channel has everything I've ever done from a broadcast on there, and check out the one on is the Wisdom Wednesday on Quicksand. I go into quite a bit of that stuff. Anyone else out there? Take one or two more, and then I will wrap up the feed for the night here and try to get some food in my stomach here. Anyone else? We'll give it about 30 more seconds. Hopefully everybody enjoyed tonight's segment, and I didn't tick off too many parents, but I felt you needed to hear it. So, it's an important one to me. It's near and dear, and I just want to see the kids as much as possible to be supported in the right manner, right? We can push, we can work hard, we can have tough love when we're in the practice days, but when it's competing time, that's not time to critique and rip apart every single thing that they may not have done well. Because guess what? They didn't try it. Okay. Didn't try to throw a bad shot. It's the same way when I'm, the age I'm at now. I didn't try to miss my mark. I didn't try to throw it terrible. Right. I went up and things didn't go the way that I wanted it to go. If we did it right every single time, then averages would be out of control, and we'd have nothing to talk about. All right, gang. I am going to wrap it up. Appreciate everybody that jumped on the feed tonight. For everybody that's on here and you think that maybe somebody would get some merit out of this particular session, please, by all means, go onto your personal pages, share this feed. If you're not already a subscriber to the Pureit Bowling channel, hop on over to YouTube, check it out. You can get anything that I've ever done. Like I said, all the broadcasts are on there. There's hours and hours of content that is on there. We are trying to get to that 500 subscriber mark. Once we do, we still have our good friend Matt Russo, who is going to be giving away a free Deviate ball of choice. So there's a lot of things on there. Bowling is continuing to open up in pretty much every state. We're starting to see some of the mandates being lifted. So now is the time. We're getting into the summer where bowling seems to slow down a little bit and where proprietors struggle to begin with. But this is really, really now, when I say it, this is time to support the proprietors. Get out there, bowl some extra games, practice with a purpose, using whatever you're using for spares. If you're hooking at spares, go out there and practice throwing straight at them. You got to start somewhere. And by all means, you can see as my title sponsors, the Hammer brand, support us. We got the best gear on the market, the 7 brands of Brunswick. If you can't find a ball motion there, I'm not really sure what to say, but the stuff is pretty special right now. A couple of new announcements came out today for some June releases, a couple of very interesting ones on there. And I know everybody is waiting on the Purple Hammer. Just be, it's coming. Probably sometime in June as well, right around Bowl Expo. So that's what the latest updates that I know. It's getting closer. But until then, stay tuned. We will definitely have some more broadcasts coming up. We will have some new Talk About It Tuesdays in the next few weeks here. Do a couple Throw It Thursdays, and have some special guests on the program. So again, everybody enjoy the rest of your night. Take care. Go support bowling. Good night.